Here's another problem. Let's say 48 or 50, better, 50. Same page, 120. 6 divided by x plus 3 minus 5 divided by x minus 2 equals negative 20 over x squared plus x minus 6. Again, if you like to use my method, then we will write 6 over x plus 3 minus 5 over x minus 2, and then?
Yeah, can we go very slow on this last one so we don't got to do another one after this?
You will have to practice because we only have 10 minutes.
Okay, well, just do this last 10 minutes. Can you just slowly and thoroughly go through this last?
Can anyone tell us what is the next step?
You could factor the denominator. Well, you can subtract it over, but you
Good. So what do I write?
Negative 20 over
What is left on the right?
0.
Good. So now let's factor x squared plus x minus 6. Very good. That's the next step.
So you just eliminate the denominator over 20 years?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm waiting for the factored form.
Oh,
Oh,
it's x
no.
minus 2.
Say it again.
X minus 2, x plus 3.
Very good. Awesome. Indeed. X minus 2 times x plus 3. Very good. You're going to give me how many restrictions? Do we all agree with 2 and negative 3?
Yes.
Perfect. Now you're going to give me the least common denominator.
Is the x minus 2, x plus 3.
Very good. And now you're going to tell me what you do to the top of each fraction. Slowly, and tell me, and I'll write it. Exactly. What it does not have. Excellent.
Second one is x plus 3.
Awesome.
And then the last one would be 1.
Or you don't have to write anything. I'm fine if you don't write anything. Any questions?
One question.
Yes, please.
Okay, so actual problem, the last problem with the negative 20 was x to, is that x to the second power, right?
You mean the denominator?
Yeah, the denominator.
Yes.
Is that x to the second power?
Yes, and we factored it into x minus 2 and x plus 3.
Okay.
So x minus 2 times x plus 3 is that x squared plus x minus 6.
Okay.
Other questions for me? Are we all on the same page?
Yeah, so you start multiplying. Yeah, but this 6 times x minus 2.
Correct. Very good. Yes. So can anyone dictate the numerator? 6x minus 12 indeed.
Take away 5x, take 5x.
Say it again. Minus 5 has to be distributed to x plus 3.
Negative 5x.
Very good. Awesome. Good. Awesome. Well done. Now what? What do I have to do next? Combine like terms. That's the key. In my notebook, I will write this as the method for solving rational equations. Number 1, I move everything to one side and I have 0 on the other. Number 2, I state restrictions. Number 3, I find the LCD, the least common denominator. Number 4,
Wait, hold on. What was number 3? Find the least common denominator.
yes, so number 1 again. Number 1, move everything to one side in case you agree to use my method. If you have a different one, use it.
So when you move everything to one side, doesn't it flip the signs?
You change the sign. Exactly. Perfect. And number 2, you state restrictions. And of course, you have to factor the denominators, right? If there are denominators that need to be factored, you will have to factor them, correct? Then you find, after restrictions, you find the least common denominator. Can anyone tell us the next step after the least common denominator? No, you have the adjustments for the top. I call them adjustments. The adjustments for the top. You cannot combine like terms before you identify the adjustments for the numerators. So find the adjustments for the numerators.
So it's do everything to one side, state restrictions, and then
Find the least common denominator. And then find the adjustments for the numerators. Then, now you're combining like terms.
when you say adjustment for numerator,
This, and this. So then the numerator now becomes,
Is it x minus 7?
so this is negative 27, yes, minus 7 indeed, over x minus 2, x plus 3, and you write 0 over 1. That's the next step. After you combine like terms, you write the right-hand side as being 0 over 1. To remind us or refresh our memory on what? To cross multiply, because now this is a proportion. So here's a question for you. How come that I didn't cross multiply from the very beginning? Because this is not, it's not a proportion. It has 3 fractions. A proportion cannot have 3 fractions. Good. So now we are cross multiplying. And we have x minus 7 equals 0, which means x equals 7. What is my final concern?
Is it a restriction?
Exactly. So check whether x equals 7 is on my list. Is 7 on my list? No. So this is it. Any questions? Any questions?
Why don't we use this 20 up here? When you put the 20 inside this, the last equation,
Yes?
when you put 6x minus 12, that's when we
Yes?
did everything gave
Yes.
plus 20. Why do we put plus 20? Right? We didn't do that.
Plus 1 times 20.
No, we didn't use the 20.
When you combine like terms,
12 and 12 and 20.
because you had negative 12 and negative 15 and a positive 20, and that made negative 27 and 20, and that gave us the negative
Oh,
7.
okay, yeah, okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So let's start. I know I only have 3 minutes. 1.5. Quadratic equations. Quadratic equations. Can anyone give us an example of a quadratic equation? So we know so far 2 types, right? We know linear. We separate the terms and we divide and combine like terms. We know rational, cumbersome. So many different steps. Move terms around, finding restrictions, finding the least common denominator, finding adjustments for the top, combining like terms, cross multiplying, checking against restrictions. A lot of steps. So 2 types of equations we refreshed our memory on. So can anyone give us a quadratic equation, an example of a quadratic equation?
X squared plus x minus 6.
Awesome example. And that's how we are going to start with. Good. This is a quadratic equation. We have, and we will be looking at 4 different methods. 4 different methods of solving quadratic equations. Number 1, factoring. Number 2, taking, that's number 4. But you're right, you're right. It doesn't, the order is not important. Taking square roots. 3, completing,
The square.
yes, completing the square. And number 4, indeed quadratic formula. Number 1, factoring. Number 2, taking square roots, completing the square, and quadratic formula. So, because I only have 1 more minute, this is a perfect example of type 1, in which we apply method number 1. Can anyone tell us what to do with x squared plus x minus 6?
I would make it
figure out what 2 times what makes 6, but when you subtract it, you get a positive 1.
So how do I factor this?
You know you have an x in each one.
Correct.
X plus 2, X minus 3.
And one
But if I write x plus 2 and times x minus 3, then the middle term will be negative x. But you're on the right track. X plus 3, x minus 2. So there are 2 possibilities here. The first factor to be 0, or the second factor to be 0. What is the solution from the first one? What is the solution from the second one? Notice that I did not write not equal to. We're not solving rational equations here. This is the solution set.